Welcome to another in a series of programs in the Herb Cain Lecture Series. I'm Stephen Cuevas. Today's broadcast is a conversation with Larry Ellison, CEO of the Oracle Corporation, and Orville Schell, Dean of the Graduate School of Journalism at UC Berkeley. This edition of the Cain Lecture Series was recorded March 10th at Zellerbach Hall on the UC Berkeley campus. And now, today's program.
Well, Larry, welcome to Berkeley.
Good to be back.
Well, that's a good place to begin because, indeed, I know you're a kind of a high-tech sort of a person, but on the other hand, you came to California. Was it in the late 60s?
It was in the late 60s,
and
yeah.
Indeed, you ended up here in Berkeley?
Yeah, I guess I started at the University of Illinois and had a very short stint at the University of Chicago. And when I found out that I really wasn't much good at school, I decided to come out here. I clearly couldn't enroll, but I could live here.
That was a pretty tumultuous time, I think. I actually was here also, and I'm wondering, how did it imprint itself on you?
Well, I think the political movements, of course, that were going on there was what intrigued me in the beginning, and I think it engaged all of us in the late 60s and the early 70s. I can recall changing my registration from Democrat to Republican so I could vote in the primary for Ronald Reagan because I knew he had no chance of succeeding in the general election. So I was a fairly sophisticated, forecaster of the political scene at the time, But I was here actually then when Governor Reagan actually, I guess he attacked Sproul Plaza with an airstrike with tear gas. So it was an exciting time to be in Berkeley.
Do you think that, in some sense, really laid down some basic DNA in your outlook on life?
Oh, I'm not sure. I think I've always been a contrarian by nature. I think the thing that has served me very poorly in school. I had a very checkered academic record. I would either do very well in a course or very, very poorly. Was that I always questioned conventional wisdom and I always questioned authority. I would always do what made sense to me, but if something didn't make sense or someone asked me to do something that didn't make sense, including a teacher or a professor, I would tend not to do it. Well, that's disastrous in college. That is essential to be successful as an entrepreneur because the only way you can achieve competitive advantage is to do something different, to question conventional wisdom and find a case where everyone says this is true, find a case where they're all wrong and just the opposite is true, or something quite different is true. You can't simply copy and emulate, exhibit conventional wisdom and emulate what other people are doing if you're going to innovate, if you're going to be successful.
I read someplace a quote that you made that there's two possibilities if you're of that frame of mind, and people are liable to think you're nuts, and either you are or you aren't.
Right.
But just as likely, indeed, people do end up being wrong, and they don't make their way. And I'm wondering, I mean, you've had a few decisions that were on the money, but have you had a few that were off?
Oh, of course. The problem with being contrarian is all too often conventional wisdom is conventional because it's right. So you have to be fairly careful when you run these tests. But you're constantly. But if you can find flaws, if you can find, for example, right now, one of the great pieces of conventional wisdom is that this is the age of personal computing, that the PC, that Microsoft will go on forever. Well, I remember when I entered the computer industry, we were told that IBM was not a company against whom we would compete. IBM was the environment in which you would compete. So IBM wasn't a corporation, it was an institution. And it would go on forever. And now people think that Microsoft will go on forever. In fact, I don't think that's true. In fact, I think there's a huge movement afoot. If you were to look at the center of gravity of my industry, from when I first entered it, a little more than 25 years ago, to today, you'd see the mainframe created by IBM being at the center of the universe of computing, and gradually this what seemed like a toy to a lot of us, this thing called the personal computer, the Apple II. Eventually replaced by what IBM mistakenly called the IBM PC, which the real name, of course, is the Microsoft Intel PC. And IBM was the very first distributor a manufacturer and distributor of the Microsoft Intel technology, making what is probably the largest commercial mistake in the history of the Earth, which is measured at close to $1 trillion error. Someday I hope to be able to make a mistake that size myself. But IBM just accidentally, destroyed their mainframe business and created these two Goliaths, Intel and Microsoft. And the PC kind of nudged and eventually shoved the IBM mainframe out of the center of the universe of my industry. Well, right now, if you could look at that same time-lapse photograph, you would see the PC moving away from the center of gravity and this thing called the Internet moving in and eventually will absolutely dominate my industry. The era of the PC is actually on the wane, and the era of the Internet is beginning to take over.
The Cold War is over, and I'm wondering if in some of these competitions that go on now between innovative ideas, between businesses and businessmen, if we aren't sort of imbuing those with some of the energy that we once reserved for the Russians. I make reference, of course, to Redmond, Washington.
Well, most of us don't think of it as a matter of life and death. Most of us, I think Bill has a slightly different view. But I think all of us except Microsoft has rejected the war metaphor. People usually don't die. No one's widowed, no one's orphaned as a result of these commercial competitions. But in Redmond, it has been fascinating because if you follow the trial, the details of the trial, at least from my point of view, it's not really a question of did Microsoft violate the Sherman Antitrust Act? Or did Microsoft try to use their monopoly in Windows to extend that monopoly to an area like Internet browsers? The question is obviously yes. Obviously yes. But what's breathtaking was, they knew they were breaking the law. Why? I think that's a really interesting question. These guys are smart guys at Microsoft. It's not as if they're unaware of the fact that they are egregiously violating the law.
But don't corporations always push as far as they can to get a competitive advantage? No,
you try not to break. For example, Bank of America would never think of robbing Citibank.
That's a...
You just don't break into someone's bank and take their money. It's against the law. You can't do that. It gives you a tremendous competitive advantage because Citibank would have no money.
Not a bad strategy if you can get away with it.
Absolutely. And thus the Redmond idea is really kind of interesting. But again, it's utterly fascinating to me that they knowingly broke the law. And I think, when Bill Gates tells Andy Grove, Bill Gates of Microsoft tells Andy Grove of Intel, get the hell out of the software business or we'll wipe out Intel. I don't know if you know the story, but this is testified to by everybody, that Intel had a large software development effort. And Microsoft ordered Intel to get out of the software business, or perhaps the next version of Windows would run on some microprocessor other than the Intel microprocessor. So Andy Grove said, hey, life is too short. I'll just get out of the software business. When Microsoft starts ordering people out of businesses like this, which is clearly about using their Windows monopoly to control competition, the most interesting question is, why would they knowingly, year in, year out, break the law? And I got two views on this. One is they concluded that however the government punishes them for this, the punishment will not come close to offsetting the gains they got from breaking the law, getting Intel out of the software business, running Netscape out of business. And Netscape is gone. Netscape is now a piece of AOL. They're gone. They ran Netscape out of business. They got Intel out of the software business and so on. That I guess their calculation, again, these are smart guys, their calculation is that whatever punishment the government metes out at the end of this case, it will not offset the billions of dollars they've accumulated during the period of time when they broke the law. And it's a fascinating calculation. It's absolutely fascinating.
So you think it's
the only thing that makes sense to me.
You think it's a very cynical calculation?
Well, you either conclude that, or you'd have to conclude that Microsoft has no lawyers, and they were completely unaware, and they're really stupid people, and they were totally unaware of the fact that they can't use the Windows monopoly to order Intel out of the software business or to... Well, Bill Gates made the following statement. He said, if I give away all of my internet software and Netscape gives away all of its internet software, I like Microsoft's business better than Netscape's business. We're going to make Netscape moot. Now, that's a pretty interesting statement. Then he follows it up. He follows it up with, all we want is a chance to innovate. Please just give us the chance to innovate. I was under the impression the innovation was done by Netscape. Maybe I'm mistaken here, but I thought Netscape was the most innovative company in the last decade in Silicon Valley.
Well,
and they're gone.
I mean, obviously companies like yours and certainly like Microsoft are huge, and it is not uncharacteristic of large organizations to have become arrogant, sort of self-referential, and very often to forget that there's a world outside that they have to respond to.
I wish someday I hope to be in a situation to get that arrogant. I'm working on it. I'm working on this hard. Unfortunately, we've been competing with IBM and other large companies for a very long period of time, and there was a little company from Berkeley called Ingress, actually, that was born here that we competed with, and we actually we won that battle. But we have a lot of competitors. In the database business, we have a 35% market share, global market share. In desktop operating systems, Microsoft has a 95+% market share. They have, by any measure, a monopoly. And the laws are very clear. When you have a monopoly, you can't use that monopoly to create new monopolies. For example, if you're AT&T and you have a monopoly on telephones, you can't walk into another company, like, say, an insurance company, and say, I want 30% of your business or you can't use the phone. You can't do that. You can't behave. If you have a monopoly, you cannot behave. You cannot use that monopoly to kind of take over other businesses. There are very strict laws about how you must behave if you're a monopoly versus if you're offering a product where the consumer has a choice.
Now, Larry, this clearly is an issue which gets you riled up. Let us ruminate for a moment about why it's so important.
Why obeying the law is so important?
No. Let's look a little more in a more interior fashion. Now, might we say that has something to do with your predilection for toppling titans or anti-authoritarianism? Do you feel some...
You think this is self-interest on my part?
Well, speak.
Self-interest? Sure, partially it's self-interest, but no, I'm actually fairly upset that Netscape's gone. I think Microsoft's behavior is astounding. I think this big lie, this please just give me a chance to innovate. When you destroy the most innovative company in the Valley in a decade, the company that really popularized the internet, and you do this in the most egregious way. You give away not only do you give away your products, your browser, but you go to all the people who are dependent upon you, like for Windows, like Compaq and Dell and other computer companies, and you insist that they stop distributing the Netscape stuff, or you're going to make life hard on them. You're going to make it difficult because of your control of Windows. When you so ruthlessly go after an innovative company like this until you run them out of business, I have a problem with that.
This sounds like Wild Bill Hickok.
I think that the behavior up in Redmond is unprecedented since perhaps Rockefeller Standard Oil, maybe in its most aggressive days. It really is, and if you look at the details of the trial, it's breathtaking. Microsoft is trying to destroy innovation. They're clearly destroyed Netscape. They're trying to destroy innovation simply because it's in their interest to destroy innovation. Innovation will move the world of computing away from personal computing, where Microsoft has a monopoly. Microsoft has the most, and those with the most have the most to lose. So any innovation that would take people away from personal computing to the next generation of internet computing means they lose their monopoly. They lose these incredible 50% profits. So it's in Microsoft's interest to slow innovation as much as possible and preserve their PC monopoly for as long as possible as they accumulate tremendous cash and the power that goes with the cash. For them to then destroy an innovative company like Netscape, to try to destroy Java by making multiple versions of Java and quote polluting Java, and there's plenty of Microsoft email around that verifies that strategy. destroying innovative companies, polluting innovative languages, and then, when they're doing that aggressively, to then publicly say, please don't take away our chance to innovate, is really one of the most cynical PR campaigns and business campaigns that at least I've ever witnessed in any industry.
This really is a kind of a surrogate evil empire, then.
Yeah.
All right, now we've gotten beyond that. Do you think you have been covered fairly by the media? And share with us some of your views on the media.
Covered fairly. The media has a job. I'm not going to accuse the media its primary job is circulation, but I mean, if you are running a magazine, or if you're a program director on a station, your job is to get viewers or to get readers. And sometimes people write articles that make me more interesting than I really am. So I'm not thrilled with everything that's been said about me. Or I mean, there's some really astonishing things written about me. I've got a few favorites.
Well, let it share them with us.
I will share my very, very favorite. But I'm not. I have no problem with the media.
Well, we have a new element now added to the media, and you're certainly integrally involved in this, and that is the internet and all of the online publications, the web. Do you think things are getting better or worse from the perspective of the public dialogue in the media for this extraordinary new technology that suddenly has been offered us?
I think one of the things the internet's doing is going to allow a degree of specialization with electronic media that we've long had with printed media. It used to be, we had 3 networks, and those networks would decide what was newsworthy. Three groups of people in Washington, in New York City, would decide what we'd hear about. And some wars they would cover, and some wars they wouldn't cover. But there'd be lots and lots of magazines. And then cable TV came out, and there were a lot more channels. But still, but now with the internet, it's more like magazines. There's incredible specialization. Chess in Hungary. There are lots and lots of different subjects that can find an audience, because it's a global medium, it's a low-cost medium, it allows for tremendous specialization, and I think overall it's a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, in general, the public dialogue has been enriched? And then taking it one more step, if the public dialogue is the basis on which governments function, do you think that we have a better functioning government, better operating civic life as a result of all of the sort of online advances that have taken place recently?
It's a very interesting question. We're still living in the age of television as far as politics is concerned, I'm afraid. I don't think politicians in our government have yet made broad enough use of the internet as a medium for us to know how it's going to affect our politics, say, in this country. Though I'd like to make a comment about how I think it will affect education tremendously, and I'll come back to that. But right now, unless you do well on television, you can't be elected to national office. So.
Do you think that's a distortion of what people have to say, who they are? What's your view of television as a vector for information?
Well, I think you have to decide whether we did a better job picking leaders in smoke-filled rooms than we do in the primary system. I think we had something that looked much closer to a parliamentary system prior to the primary system. I mean, now we really do have we really do go out and we evaluate our political choices on TV, sometimes commercials, sometimes the debates, and we vote directly in the primaries, where it used to be up until JFK ran, that the political leaders in smoke-filled rooms would pick the nominees. And which was very close to, and that's how England works, of course. The Labour Party gets elected, and smoke-filled rooms, out comes Tony Blair. But that's how all parliamentary systems work. I mean, the prime minister is always chosen by political parties, not by the electorate. And we have, and our system has changed quite a bit, where we now directly choose our president, and that level of and we often have splits between obviously the executive branch and the legislative branch, and it is not, at least it's not patently obvious to me, that the change in the democratic process from our representatives choosing a presidential nominee yielded, lower quality presidential nominees than the new system of primaries. So I think the jury's out. And the media, the media, right? Absolutely, the media. So I'm not sure the intermediation of the media and selling of candidates directly to the electorate has produced better leaders. In fact, if I had to guess, I would say, just the opposite.
You're a relatively young man. You're very successful. You're very wealthy. You've accomplished a lot. Would you ever consider running for political office?
I've thought of that. Friends of mine have asked me to run for political office. I think it's very. If there was something I really wanted to do, for example, I feel passionately about education. I really do feel passionate about education. I think we're doing a dismal job of it here in California. Thank you. I think that's a good reason to run for office. The only problem, and I've been interested in running for governor of California. That's the job I think, because that's the most important job in terms of shaping education in this country.
I can see the headline tomorrow.
I would lose by such a huge margin. It doesn't make any difference. But I do feel very strongly about that. And I think there's California, again, being governor of California, that we have the largest education budget. The largest state of the union has a lot more influence about how we educate our children than the federal government does, and rightly so. So if I felt I could I could change or improve the quality of education in California, that would be a very good reason to run for governor. I'd love to work on certain things to make certain things better. I'm not sure I'm thrilled with the idea of being governor and all these interesting things to be written about me every day. I've already seen bizarre things written about me. I can only imagine what happens once you're governor.
Well, or when you're trying to be governor. We've seen the ordeal that the president has been through because of his private life. Would that be something that would perhaps warn against you?
Oh, well, what do you mean, Orville?
The psychiatrist said...
You got some special questions further down near the end?
I haven't asked one question I've written down here.
Well, I can speak directly to someone who is a very good friend and someone who cares deeply about education and would be a wonderful president. As Colin Powell will not run for president because of the bizarre way we treat our political candidates. And I think he's also, I think the family's also worried about a possible assassination attempt, which is horrifying. But the entire process has discouraged a lot of people from wanting to enter public life. That's not a good thing. That's a big problem.
Wouldn't you say that it would probably take a fairly titanic ambition to want to do this? To put up with all of the vicissitudes of running and the media and one thing and another.
I think there are two reasons why people run for office. Again, we constantly run these little tests to see how we stack up, see if we're getting better, so we can measure ourselves against how we were yesterday, and we measure ourselves against our peers. So a lot of people run for office, seek high office, simply as a matter of seeing if they can take that next step in their career. Mm-hmm. And it's a matter of human ego, and that's a very strong motivator. The other reason, and I think there is another reason, some people would say I've now listed all reasons why people run for political office. The other reason is perhaps it really is something that's important to you that you want to get done, and the only way you can get this done is to start this company or to seek this office and achieve this office and pursue this program. And I think it's that, at least for me, that would be the primary motivator. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I would like the electoral process. Going out and making lots and lots of speeches. I certainly wouldn't. The good news is that at least I wouldn't have to raise any money for the campaign. Wouldn't have to go to fundraisers. Thank God.
You were in a sailboat race recently, which was obviously brought you close to some sorts of reflection on life and death. And did it change you?
Well, I've been asked that, and I don't think. I think that's the most common question I've been asked. And I did, at least for a short period of time. And you put it out of your mind very quickly. We sailed this boat from Sydney Harbor to south to the island south of Australia called Tasmania, and its capital, Hobart. And we ended up sailing right through a hurricane. And it was certainly possible that the boat would sink and we would all die. But while that crosses your mind ever so briefly, you go right back to work, because there's really nothing you could do. If there's a magic button we could have pushed and everyone gotten off the boat and gone back to Kansas, I'm sure we would have all clipped our heels, but there was no way to do that. So you're in problem-solving mode, so you go right back to sailing. Yeah, so I spent most of my time sailing and trying not to die, as opposed to worrying about dying. But I don't think it really changed me. I mean, I've always loved life. I've always found life incredibly precious. It's very short. I find life beautiful. So I don't think I needed a near-death experience to make me appreciate being alive. So in that respect, I don't think I was changed. It certainly reemphasized to me how beautiful but fragile life is. And at the end of this race, it's kind of interesting. I mean, it was a horrific race, and if you want me to, I can go into a little bit of the details of the magnitude of the storm. But the boat, I guess, at its very worst, the boat we were hitting waves, and the problem when you're in a storm, in a hurricane, it's really not the wind that gets you. The wind gets up to 100 miles an hour. We had apparent wind going across the deck of 100 miles an hour. And it's pretty horrible. And it's not even the size of the waves. Everyone says, the waves were 30 feet high or 40 feet high or 50 feet high. That's not really the issue. It's the frequency or how steep the waves are. And the waves we were dealing with, because a wave can be very high, but if you're going to slowly go up the wave and then slowly go down the back of the wave, whether the wave is 20 feet or 100 feet high makes no difference. If the wave is a wall, if you're hitting a wall of water, it's very steep, then a 30-foot wave is enough to do the job. And we were hitting about 35, 40-foot waves, and it was literally like driving a truck into a concrete wall. And the wave would just, the wind, it was 100 miles an hour of wind hitting you, and this wave would just sweep across the deck, and we were all cabled in. We had Kevlar and steel straps holding us into the boat, and if those things were not attached, people would have just we'd all been blown off the boat in a couple of minutes. And every 20 seconds.
Were you under sail?
We're always under sail. We're always sailing. We were sailing into 60 knots of wind, which is about 70 miles an hour of wind, and we're going about 16 knots into 60 knots of wind. So that makes the apparent wind going across the deck, round numbers, about 90 miles an hour. And the water would rush across the deck and knock people over. And you'd lift up. The boat would then lift out of the wave and go to the top of the wave. Now, normally, and the waves about 30 feet high, 35, 40 feet high. They were ranging between 30 and 40 feet for several hours. Now, normally you slide down the back of a wave. You sail down the back of the wave. These waves were so steep, not only their faces, but also the backs of the waves. The boat would just exit, and this is an 80-foot carbon fiber boat, would just exit the wave and fall, like down an elevator shaft. And you'd go weightless, and you'd watch the people on the foredeck lift off the deck. And the surface tension of the water is such, it's like being dropped off a 5-story building every 20 seconds. And you just crash into the trough below, and things started breaking. And this boat is all titanium and carbon fiber. It is the, we are described as the glamour maxi. This boat has raced 26 times. We have 25 firsts, 1 second. It's the most successful racing sailboat in history. Sailboat racing goes back hundreds of years. We have the world's best crew, and all of us thought this boat might break up.
Are you a religious person? I mean,
I'll give the answer. I always give that question, which is anyone who's seen a sunrise in Yosemite or cherry blossoms in Japan, that should be proof enough for God, for anybody. But am I religious? Do I think I was going to heaven?
No.
Angels and harps, or
not specifically in this instance. But I mean, do you consider yourself to be somehow spiritually involved in some belief system or in some notion of
Well,
life?
Specifically, I certainly have uncertainties about it. I'm not counting on an afterlife. How's that?
And what can't you do that you would like to do with your life? Where are the frustrations for you about your aspirations to be a human being that has accomplished X, Y, and Z?
Well, I play classical guitar. I wish I was a little better at that. But I know, practice. I think, I see, I continue to believe anything's possible. I continue to be an optimist about life, my own life in general. So I can't think of a thing. I don't know if this is arrogance or not. I mean, that I really want, that I can't, that I don't have a reasonable chance to pursue and achieve if I work at it. And I am doing the things that I want. I like racing sailboats. It's fun, and I've been enjoy doing that. I've been successful at it. I think the things that I want to do, I am doing. I think, again, the things that I'm not doing, that I guess are a little bit frustrating, is I would love to see somebody try to reform this incredible educational system we have here in California.
Well, I'd like to give you a carte blanche to come to Berkeley anytime.
Berkeley is not the problem. Berkeley is, we have, the United States is an amazing place. I remember I was a huge supporter of President Clinton in his first term. I was the second largest contributor, and I spent a lot of time with him when he was governor of Arkansas. And I was very upset when he said we had a health care crisis in this country. I was appalled. I was very proud about NAFTA, by the way. And with apologies to Barbara Boxer, it's okay for Mexicans to have jobs. I am stunned. Let me make my political advertisement here. I cannot believe we have politicians who claim to be humanitarian, but their sense of their love of people ends right at the Rio Grande. Excuse me? Oh, we might be exporting some jobs to Mexico? Okay. But that might be a good thing. Don't we want a prosperous Mexico on our border? We should cooperate as thoroughly as possible with the government of Mexico, and NAFTA is a very good thing, and we should make sure that job creation and good job creation happens south of our border. How can you only care for people? What's the difference? What happens to a person when they take one step across a border? I don't get it. So I'm very proud of President Clinton and NAFTA. I think NAFTA is a great thing, and it is working, and Mexico is doing much better than it would have. There are much better jobs now south of the border, and that's a great thing. So I'm very proud of the President for that. I think when he said that there was a health care crisis in the United States, and I asked him, I said, if there's a health care crisis in the United States, by the way, people get in airplanes and fly to the United States for health care. So people all over the world, if you get sick, this is the place you go. Now, if there's a health care crisis in the United States, what would you say about our educational system, K through 12? Holocaust? What language do you use to describe our public school system? Now, Berkeley, people get in airplanes and send their kids to Berkeley. And they send them. We have incredible institutions of higher learning. And in my state in particular, we have an educational crisis that would have been unthinkable only a generation ago.
Well, this raises a question, an interesting question that, as you know, many people have criticized Silicon Valley executives, entrepreneurs, for not being sufficiently philanthropic, that there's this massive accumulation. Well, you know the story. How do you respond to that?
I can only, I can't control other executives. I mean, Oracle, I know what I've done, and I'll talk about the company. Oracle, we're putting $100 million worth of computing into schools, the poorest schools in California. We've adopted lots and lots of schools, and we are making sure that computers are available. And I think in Oakland, we brought online, boy, I wish I knew my numbers better, I think about 20 or 30 different schools about 3 months ago. And these are in very difficult school districts, and made sure that they all had computer laboratories, and lots of Oracle people volunteered to take their time to teach the kids and teach the teachers. And we'll spend $100 million doing this in the poorest school districts around this country. That's just a start.
I mean, in your view, what is the obligations of someone such as yourself towards the common weal? I mean, what do you owe back to society as a result of having gotten so much?
I'd like to say it a little differently. I think I owe it to myself to contribute to other people, because that's the best strategy for happiness I can think of. Philanthropy isn't something you should do because you think you owe something to somebody else. Philanthropy is something you should do because you owe it to yourself. And it is, you feel great. It makes you feel really good. So think of it as enlightened self-interest. Philanthropy is in all of our interest. It makes you feel good. and it makes your community better, and we all live in this community. So you benefit 9 ways from Sunday. So it's a very bad strategy not to be philanthropic.
So from whence comes this criticism? I mean, maybe not in your case, but that somehow this new entrepreneurial energy and these resources have not responded adequately to this civic need.
I think it probably comes from the fact that it's a very young industry. You know, we got a lot of young people running these companies, and they're still in the I don't know, I don't want to say acquisitive. I think so many of these guys are and women are still building their companies and working 17 hours a day, building their companies. If you tapped them on the shoulder, said, do you think it'd be good if I could show you how you could adopt a school and get and make this difference? Would you do that? You know, just check the box here. Yeah, oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. Got to go back to work. I think people are working so hard. It takes time to give your money away intelligently. It's not simply a matter of writing a check. There are an awful lot of charitable institutions that I don't think do a very good job of spending the money. So if you really want to tackle a problem, again, like education, I haven't had the largest private foundation of diseases of the aging. See, I'm not really that young. But I think one of the worst problems that, you know, this is another one of my. I got two things I really I spend my money on. One is education, and the other is an interesting aspect of healthcare. As the baby boomers, you know, reach retirement age, there's going to be an incredible burden put on our economy to care for, you know, the baby boomers in their retirement, provide both retirement benefits and health care. We spend huge fortunes caring for people who can't read. We spend huge fortunes for people who get Alzheimer's, caring for people who get Alzheimer's. If we can do a better job of curing illiteracy, if we can do a better job of curing Alzheimer's and some of the other diseases, the diseases of aging, it is not only dramatically more humane, it is much more economical, the way we would tackle a problem. But if you look at our allocation of resources, if you look at the way the country spends its money, we spend enormous fortunes on caring for people, whether it's health care or care because people can't compete in the job market. Huge fortunes caring for those people, and we spend next to nothing on programs to find cures for these diseases or improve our educational system so people can compete in the job market. It's a completely irrational allocation of funds from both an economic and humanitarian standpoint.
What is still left to be done in your life?
Every April, the cherry blossoms bloom again in Japan, and I want to see that every year. You know, I want to see every springtime I'd like to see a lot more springtimes, a lot more cherry, a lot more cherry blossoms blowing in the wind. I think in my career, where Oracle has a chance to do the unthinkable, which is dethrone Microsoft. We're the number 2 software company in the world. So we'd like to be number 1.
That certainly is the Lord's work.
I think that's possible. But again, I tend to be an optimist. So lots left to be done. There are interesting people that I want to meet and talk to. I think there's lots of time left and lots left to be done.
Maybe we should move on and do a few other questions. Anything that often it's helpful to ask people if there's anything that they never get a chance to talk about that they'd like to talk about.
Ooh.
I mean, do you feel that people are always missing the heart of the matter when they're interviewing you, or what is the heart of the matter?
Oh, what is the heart of the matter?
What's worth doing?
Creating. I think creating. I'm a man, so I can't really have children like women can have children. I think the act of creation, whether you're an artist or a mother or an entrepreneur, is the most glorious thing we do as human beings. It's one of the most joyful things we do as human beings. I think another thing we do is just interacting with other people.
Do you sometimes have the feeling that life is, partially because of the information revolution that you're involved in, is just going too damn fast?
No. No, I love the pace of change. I mean, we have more biologists doing research today than we've had than all of history before it. I think that promises incredible change in terms of knocking off the major diseases that afflict us. I think the democratization of education. In the United States, I mentioned earlier that we have a crisis of education in K through 12. We also have an incredible competitive advantage with the rest of the world here in the United States, and that most of the great institutions of higher learning are in the United States. Most of the colleges in the world are right in this country. Most of the majority of the graduate degrees granted upon the planet Earth are granted in the United States. The internet is going to change that a little bit because this is Berkeley or Cal and Stanford and MIT and Caltech will be able to deliver their product electronically to students in Guangzhou and in south of China, and to students in Hyderabad in India, to students in Novosibirsk in Russia, and we're suddenly going to see something that's been enormously scarce everywhere else in the world, advanced education, become much more plentiful and much more accessible, much more affordable because of the internet.
I can't resist asking you a little bit about China. I know you've been there, you've spoken to Premier Li Peng, and I wonder what your prognosis is on the effect of the marketplace and the internet in terms of opening up the somewhat refractory society.
Well, I think the Chinese leaders, although they will not admit this, I had a long conversation with Li Peng, and I've actually known Jiang Zemin before. I know many people know that Jiang Zemin 10 years ago, he was a mayor, and then he was also ran the electronics ministry, and I knew him in the days when he ran the electronics ministry. I think the people in China recognize that there's going to be democracy, inevitably that the democratization of the marketplace will lead to a democratization of the political system. But they point out to me, and it's very hard to argue with, that there are two experiments going on right now. One is the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, now Russia, where they democratized the political system first and the economy second. And then there's the Chinese experiment where they democratized the economy first and the political system second. And who do you think is doing better? Very hard to debate. Certainly, things are going a lot better in China. I think, again, there's general recognition in China. But let me give you some pretty wild statistics. Next year 2000, there'll be more English-speaking people in China than there are in the United States. So when this institution and other institutions, great institutions of higher learning, start granting degrees and offering their educational materials across the internet, you will have more students. I predict that Stanford will have more students outside of Palo Alto. Cal will have more students outside of Berkeley than you have at Berkeley. So what does it mean? By the way, have you ever look at a paper in Hong Kong or in Shenzhen or in Shanghai that about 2/3 of the want ads are for institutions of higher learning? There's incredible demand and not much supply of education in Asia. Incredible demand. And that demand is going to be met through through electronic education across the internet from our great universities here as we export this educational product. So what will it mean 20 years from now when China not only has more English-speaking people in the United States, but China has more physicists in the United States, China has more mathematicians in the United States, China has more electrical engineers in the United States, China has more nuclear physicists in the United States, China has more rocket scientists in the United States. And anyone feeling uncomfortable? So when I say the Internet's going to change the world, I mean the Internet's going to change the world.
What's going to happen when Y2K hits?
Well, I think the most likely victims of Y2K are the computer companies. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Someone said that, but I'm not sure they were talking about Y2K. So hard to It's bizarre. I think there are going to be some embarrassing hiccups in Y2K, but the idea that people are stockpiling, rice and all this other stuff is a little wacky. So elevators aren't going to stop. The air traffic planes are not going to collide with each other, and your money's not going to vanish into a black hole. None of that. There's a very funny. I got a very funny email note the other day. It said that Microsoft has delayed the new version of Windows NT, known as Windows, now known as Windows 2000, till June 30th, 1901.
Well, how are you all at Oracle prepared?
We are.
You have your bugs.
We are told by our lawyers. The biggest concern about Y2K for us is the potential legal exposure as everyone sues everybody else over this thing. We've been preparing this for a very long time. For several years, we've had all of our software has been Y2K compliant. We send out registered letters to people we know are running older versions of our software. We've offered free upgrades to everybody to get them Y2, even if you're not paying support, even if you haven't bought the product. We're trying to get everyone upgraded to the Y2K stuff. We're doing everything we can and keep from getting sued.
Where do you see business and the internet in the next few years? I guess this must be referring to e-commerce.
Yeah, well, I think it's fascinating that the important names, the big names in the internet right now, Yahoo, eBay, everyone's going to go home and bid on that Furby. All these big names, Amazon, are really e-commerce sites aimed at consumers. But it's a fact that most money is made not selling to consumers, but selling to businesses, businesses buying from other businesses. And there is not yet a single brand that is known as the internet business-to-business brand. I mean, Amazon is a business-to-consumer. Amazon sells to consumers. Yahoo provides news and other services, email, to consumers. eBay provides auction to consumers, E-Trade, stock trading to consumers. But strangely enough, the consumer movement has taken place before the business-to-business movement. So I think that the real impact of the internet is yet to be felt, or you ain't seen nothing yet.
Is it difficult or fun to be so well known?
Mainly fun. I think people complain about lack of privacy and lots of silly things written about me, and people that don't know me at all really hating me, which seems it bothers me a little bit, I guess. But you kind of just give up. But in general, it's great. You got better tables at restaurants.
The meaningful things in life.
People you don't know send you gifts. Stuff like that. I think the best thing is. You get to meet really interesting people, and again, I think that's what life is all about. We're curious about other people, and I've met some extraordinary people I never would have gotten to meet.
But on the other hand, people always want something, and that can often distort,
That's never bothered me, actually. People wanting things from me. We all engage in transactions, and it doesn't. I don't think self-interest is a bad thing. I think self-interest is a good thing. We hope that self-interest is enlightened. That people, again, back to what I was saying earlier, we hope people's strategy for happiness is a sound strategy. We hope people, understand it's a transaction. They want something. So perhaps you get something back in return. And there's lots of different things. Lots of stuff goes on in this transaction. So again. In general, sure, there are people that there are people that want to engage in kind of bad transactions and kind of avoid those people. But by and large, again, it doesn't bother me. If someone wants me to make a contribution to something and it's a good cause and they're seeking me out for that reason, that's a good thing. They should be doing that.
Yeah, you mentioned enlightenment, and I'm wondering, insofar as you feel enlightened, where did it come from?
Well, in my case, mainly trial and error, lots of error. You just try different things in life, and you try to figure out what's working and what's not, and what's making me happy, and you start discovering a pattern of your own behavior. I did this, for example. I figured out after about 40 years that getting in fights with my father wasn't a good thing. That if I was ever mean to my father, you can't be mean. You can't. Being nasty almost never works. Because you're almost always degrading yourself. So you learn to be polite to other people and treat other people with courtesy, because if you treat anyone any way but that way, you lower your self-esteem, which makes you less happy. So I think, and I'm sure I've been guilty of being rude when I shouldn't have been rude, and I felt bad about it, and I kind of figured out, well, maybe I should stop being rude. So over time, I've gradually figured out behavioral strategies that made me feel better about myself, that helped me be happier, and that's it.
So I mean, have you stopped being rude?
I think. Well, not to Bill.
All right, we'll grant you one exception.
But to most people, yeah, every once in a while, someone's behavior is so awful that I get to lower my behavior to that same level, which I really enjoy. When you lower the bar right there, I'm very happy to play at that level if that's what you want to play at. But in general, I think being rude is just a really big mistake, and it's very easy to kind of figure people out. If people, I like people who are kind of like promiscuously nice. This characteristic of nice. I mean, I really can't judge somebody if they're nice to me. I'm kind of more interested in how they treat other people around them, like the person who takes the toll on the bridge or something like that. Because I think the trait, it's really interesting. It's almost a pejorative. I know that a long time ago in high school, if you wanted to say something kind of nasty about a girl, you say, well, yeah, she's nice. And that was the pejorative for someone you really were saying, don't go out with her. But actually, I think that's the single most important characteristic. The thing I'm most proud of my children for is they're both really nice. I mean, whatever academic or intellectual or athletic abilities they have, whatever talents they have, that pales in comparison to them being nice people, being people that are courteous and sensitive to the needs of the other people around them. That they don't think the world simply revolves around them. I think, again, I think that's the thing that makes me think they're going to have great lives.
Of course, it is difficult when, I mean, you are in a position of influence and power, and indeed the world does in some significant ways revolve around you. You can have what you want and do what you want, to kind of remember some of these verities.
You can't. People are pretty smart, and if you act like a jerk, people won't have anything to do with you. You'll be spending your time with the wrong people. So it's a filter. I mean, you can filter out all the good people out of your life by acting like a jerk. And if you're rich, you will have people left. I'm not sure you want them.
Well, maybe on that note, bit of wisdom, we will end. Before we do, I want to thank Stephen Barclay, as usual, for putting all of this together. I'd also like to thank Chris and Michael Boskin, who helped, well, I shouldn't say helped, who did dragoon Larry here. I also want to thank Mimi Chakarova in the Dean's office for all of the hard work she put in on this event. And Larry, I want to thank you for coming to Berkeley. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Larry Ellison, CEO of the Oracle Corporation, in conversation with Orville Schell, Dean of the Graduate School of Journalism at UC Berkeley. This edition of the Kane Lecture Series was made possible by the members of KQED-FM. This program was recorded March 10th at Zellerbach Hall on the UC Berkeley campus. Recording engineer was Dan Bringer. I'm Stephen Cuevas.